welcome to the garden. So today I'm going to start getting some more plants in the ground. Now hopefully that really cold weather has passed, but I'm not putting anything tender out. This is all reasonably hardy stuff, so brassicas, chard and broad beans. So first I'm going to start with some brassicas. Now I've got a bed here that it was manured in the autumn, so it should be in reasonably good condition. I think I'm going to add a little bit of feed, and in this bucket I've got a combination of fish blood and bone, pelleted chicken manure and a little bit of lime, and I'm going to give that a sprinkling with this mixture and then just rake that in before planting. The other thing I've done is put up some hoops to support some netting. So this is butterfly netting, and that will be useful later in the year, but the reason for covering the brassicas at the moment is because of the pigeons. So we've got a rather healthy pigeon population just round about, and they're always in the garden, so I don't dare to leave any of the brassicas uncovered. Now I've never actually used these blue hoops before. These are made from water pipe, and I've seen lots of gardeners using them, and I thought I'd give them a try this year, and I must say I rather like them. They seem to be rather handy for this job, so I'm quite pleased with that, and yeah, hopefully that will keep the pigeons off of my cabbages. So what I'm going to plant in here today is some red drumhead cabbage, Portuguese kale and some dwarf green curled kale. Now if I knock one of these out, you can see that these have quite a reasonable root ball. They're not too pot bound or anything, but I think they're ready to go. Now of these three brassicas, I think the Portuguese kale will be the tallest growing sort. Certainly should be taller than this dwarf green curled kale. Now what I'm going to do, because of the shape of this hoop, is I'm going to put the Portuguese kale in a row down the centre, and then I'll put the dwarf green and the red drumhead cabbage along the outsides. So I will get 3 plants across this 4-foot bed, and I know if you're growing large cabbages, maybe you could only put 2 across here, but I usually put 3 across, and I think it's okay. So anyway, I'll put the tallest growing down the centre where there's more height under this hoop, and the short ones down the outside. So I'm planting these fairly deep so that they're set well down into the soil here, and I'm firming them in quite hard. I don't think any of the brassicas enjoy wobbling around. And while I'm here, I might as well pinch out these old leaves off these. These are Wheeler's Imperial, I think, so a spring cabbage. So I'll pinch out the those old leaves, they're not good for anything. So on to our chard plants. Now there are actually 2 or 3 plants in each one of these pots, but they grow happily together in a clump. Now I'm going to try these out in what for us is a new border. So this border faces more or less towards the north, so it's quite shady. It gets afternoon sun, so at this time of year the sun maybe goes 2/3 of the way back towards the fence, and later in the year when the sun is higher in the sky we will get sun more or less to the back of this border. But even so, it's the shadiest position in the garden, so I will be planting this primarily with leafy veg, and they're the sort of things that can cope with some shade. Now that will include chard and lots of the brassicas, and possibly things like lettuce during the summer. Now they don't like it too hot, so they might be quite happy here. I'm also going to try some peas and broad beans here, not for the early sowings. They're in our main beds where they get full sun, but later on in the year the peas in particular don't like it too hot, and I suspect the same is also true of the broad beans. So I'm hoping that they might do quite well in these beds here for the second sowing. But it's going to be a bit of an experiment this year to see how this border works. But the first thing I'm going to be planting here is the chard. So I'm going to space these out reasonably well. They're already growing in a cluster, so I don't want to crowd them too much. I also need to be able to get across the back here to work on the fruit, so I think I can get maybe 4 plants in this space. Very difficult to dig in this with a trowel because there are so many stones. Well, these don't look too bad. There's plenty of root here, and they're just starting to wind around the bottom of the pot. Nothing too serious, but it's probably just as well that I'm getting them in the ground today. So on to the broad beans. This one is Masterpiece Green Long Pod, and I started these in these particularly deep cells, so I'm hoping there's a good amount of root in these. Yeah, and there's a lot of root down the bottom of these. This compost is ever so light, so it does tend to fall apart when I take the cells out, but these look rather nice, so hopefully I can get a couple of rows of these in place. Boom, boom. one of the reasons that this ground is quite so firm as it is because not a lot was growing here before. When the chickens were here, they would pretty much eat everything that came up. So it's been a while since this ground had much growing in it. And that's not good for the structure of the soil, really. So I expect over the next few years it will improve. Well, I'm pretty pleased with that. I've got 24 broad beans in the ground, and out of this tray of 28 there was just the one that didn't germinate and one that is rather runty looking. I've got 2 that are reasonable as spares in case anything happens to one of these. But I've also got 2 more trays of broad beans to get in somewhere, but I don't really know where they're going to go. I am starting to wonder whether it was such a good idea to turn over another bed to asparagus this year, but I'm sure I'll find somewhere to plant them. But I'm going to do those next week. So that is all for this video. So thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.